The buzzing of James's phone sliced through the silence of their dimly lit bedroom. 2:08 a.m. He blinked twice, groggy, before sliding it off the nightstand. Richard's name flashed on the screen, unusual for this hour. Heart racing, James picked up. James, Richard's voice was panicked, breathless, the kind of fear that tightened the lungs. Linda's mom, she was in a car accident. They're prepping her for surgery, but they need a deposit. We don't have enough. Can you get here fast? Bring whatever you can. James sat bolt upright. What? How bad is it? They're saying internal bleeding. If we don't act now. Richard's voice cracked. James didn't wait to hear more. He turned to Linda, still curled under the covers, barely stirred by the light. Linda, get up, it's your mom. There's been a crash. She's in critical condition. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused. What? I just got off the phone with Richard. They need money at the hospital, right now. She frowned. We don't have anything liquid at home. James was already pulling open drawers, grabbing his wallet, slipping on pants. We'll have to use the bride price fund. We can withdraw at the ATM. Linda sat up fast. Excuse me? He turned to her, urgent but calm. We don't have time. It's your mother. They need something for the surgery to start. Let's just use the card from the bank box. We can figure out the rest later. Linda stared at him like he'd suggested pawning her bones. No way, that's my bride price. James froze. Linda, your mom is in the hospital. She could die if we don't move. She got out of bed, the sheets dragging behind her. And? Why does that mean I give up my security? That's not how this works. He took a step forward. We're not talking about shopping. We're talking about saving your mom's life. And you're not talking about your savings. You're talking about mine, she shot back. Isn't it funny how fast you run to my money when there's a problem? He stared at her, stunned. You think I'd lie about your mother just to get your money? She folded her arms. Wouldn't be the first time men pulled guilt trips. If it's that urgent, call your relatives. His voice was tight. Linda, this isn't a game. This is your mother. She let out a dry laugh. Then you go figure it out, but don't touch my bride price. He stepped closer, voice low. Can't you let go of money for 1 second? Just 1 second, for family. Her eyes narrowed, mouth curling into something sharp. If it's not my parent, don't touch my money. James wasn't the kind of man who raised his voice. He'd grown up with a quiet father who believed character was proven in action, not in noise. That's the code James followed his whole life. Don't promise, just deliver. That belief carried him through long shifts, missed meals, and years of silent sacrifices to build the life he thought he and Linda were building together. He remembered when they first started dating. Linda had been all business even then, wrapped in elegance and sharp practicality. Her voice, soft in tone but hard in implication, had once asked him, "How do you see yourself providing stability long term?" It wasn't a flirtatious tease, it was an interview. And James, naive but deeply sincere, had answered with a straight face, "I'll figure it out, I always do." And he did. Over the next 3 years, James cut back on everything. He sold his old car and started biking to work, even through winter slush. He freelanced on weekends, skipped weddings and gatherings, saved every cent. The day Linda's parents first mentioned the bride price, it wasn't even a question in his mind. It was culture, it was honor, and it was her. He'd handed over $300,000 without hesitation. Her father had looked impressed. Her mother said she'd never seen a young man with such discipline. Linda, though. Linda had only glanced at the transfer receipt before filing it into a folder labeled Security Fund. Even then, something inside James had stuttered. Security. That's what this is, she had said. It's what ensures I'm not stuck if things fall apart. James had nodded. He understood. Relationships needed realism. But a sliver of doubt had rooted itself that day and never quite died. In the months leading up to the wedding banquet, James worked overtime. He fielded last-minute venue changes, paid extra for a dress Linda no longer liked, and when Linda's cousin, Richard, raised the idea of hiring a professional MC instead of James's best friend, James swallowed his pride and agreed. Richard was always nearby, charming, confident, a little too slick. He'd introduced himself as the family fixer. To James, it often felt like Richard was the one marrying Linda. He handled most of the family's communications, scheduled everything from bridal shoots to table arrangements, and often negotiated decisions that James found himself agreeing to without understanding why. One night, over drinks, James had asked him, "Do you think she's happy with all this?" Richard had chuckled. "Linda doesn't do happy, man. She does secure. You gave her that, so yeah, I think she's content." Content. James had sat with that word the rest of the night. He didn't want content, he wanted love, but Linda's version of love was efficiency, joint savings plans, dental insurance, contracts, even the wedding certificate hadn't been signed yet. "We'll do it after the banquet," she'd said casually. "You know how hectic everything is right now." But weeks passed, then months. Every time he brought it up, Linda found a reason to delay. James wasn't stupid, he knew what that meant, but he didn't want to admit it, not until tonight when she stared him down over her mother's life and said the words, "If it's not my parent, don't touch my money." That was when Karen's voice returned to him. It echoed from over a year ago, back when she and James were still on talking terms. She had been his college girlfriend, the only woman who'd ever understood his quiet love language. They'd ended things amicably, drifting apart when careers took them different places. But when she heard he was dating Linda, she couldn't help saying it. Be careful, Linda's the type who prepares her exit before she enters the room. At the time, it had sounded bitter. Now, it sounded like prophecy. James remembered when Karen had stopped by to drop off a gift for the engagement party. Linda had barely acknowledged her, offering a tight smile before whispering to James, "She still likes you. Don't let her get ideas." That was Linda's world, threats everywhere, leverage always, trust optional. James's phone had been filled with bank receipts, contracts, PDFs with prenup details. Linda made him sign one, just in case. He'd laughed at the time. "Do you think I'd leave you with nothing?" She'd responded with a stare. "I think love is great, but security is smarter." Richard had helped her write the clauses. Looking back, James wasn't sure when love became negotiation. Maybe it never had a chance, maybe it had always been a deal, and he just hadn't noticed the terms. Their apartment reflected it all, organized, spotless, minimal. Linda didn't like emotional clutter. Her favorite thing to say during disagreements was, "Let's stay rational." But now, faced with her own mother's life hanging in the balance, her rationality had metastasized into cruelty. James stared down at his bruised arm, where she'd bitten him, just to stop him from taking the bank card. Her mother, dying. And Linda? She was worried about deductions and repayment schedules. And Richard? James knew that call was coming. He'd side with Linda, as always, spouting off about property lines and emotional manipulation. Richard was too polished to admit it out loud, but he'd probably already drafted a contingency plan. James leaned against the wall, staring out the window into the night. His reflection looked older, his soul felt hollow, and somewhere, beneath all the pain, something else started to grow, resolve. James paced the living room, still in his nightclothes, the adrenaline spiking through his chest as Linda sat cross-legged on the couch, arms folded like she was negotiating a refund instead of facing a family emergency. "Linda," he said, gently but firmly, "please, just for tonight, we can sort everything else out after, but right now, we need to get to the hospital, and I need the money." She tilted her head, cold and calculated. "And what happens if you don't pay me back?" James stared at her. "Are you serious?" She didn't blink. "Dead serious. I need it in writing, an IOU. You want me to sign a contract to save your mother?" His voice trembled, not with fear, but confusion. This wasn't a fight, this was a detachment unfolding in real time. Linda stood, walked over to the bookshelf and pulled out a notepad and pen. She dropped them onto the dining table with a flat thud. "Write it down. I, James, am borrowing X amount from Linda to be repaid in full regardless of outcome. Something simple." He blinked at the paper like it was a joke. "Linda, we're partners." "No," she said, "we're not married yet. The law doesn't see us as one unit, and neither does the bank. You're asking me to treat you like a loan officer while your mother's fighting for her life?" She shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time people defaulted in a crisis. James's heart sank. The woman standing in front of him wasn't scared. She wasn't emotional. She was efficient. He picked up the pen, hesitating, hand shaking. Do you even hear yourself right now? She looked him straight in the eye. Just write it. His signature trembled across the page like an insult. As he put the pen down, the phone buzzed again. Her father. James picked up without thinking. Hello? James, where the hell are you? Transfer the money, we're losing time. I'm trying, but she's asking for an IOU. Silence. Then. She what? James kept the phone away from his ear just in time as her father's voice erupted. She's writing a bloody IOU for her own mother's surgery? Linda's head snapped toward him. Don't make it sound like that, she hissed. You're twisting the facts. James lowered the phone slightly. He heard everything. Suddenly, she lunged forward and yanked the phone out of his hand. Don't talk about me like I'm not in the room, she screamed. You pathetic old fool, you want my money? Sign the paper. If not, go beg someone else. She hurled the phone across the room. It hit the wall, screen flickering out. James looked down at the smashed plastic. What is wrong with you? You let him insult me. He's panicking. His wife might not survive the hour. She spun on him. And whose fault is that? I didn't crash the car. I'm not giving up my future just because someone else didn't plan theirs. Before he could reply, her own phone buzzed on the table. Caller ID. Dad. She sneered. Now he's using my phone? He reached for it, but she grabbed it first and declined the call. No one threatens me and then gets my money. His voice was low. That's your father. Your mother is the one in surgery. She rolled her eyes. You keep saying your. This is your family, your mess. He stared at her in disbelief. Wait, you think this is my mother in the hospital? She scoffed. Well, yeah. Otherwise, why would your dad be screaming on the phone? Why would I need to pay for it? He stepped closer. Linda, that was your father. Your mom is the one in the accident. She went still, eyes narrowing. Don't lie. I'm not. I've told you. Richard called me first. Your mom's in critical care. Her lips parted slightly. Something uncertain flashed across her face, but it vanished just as fast. You're playing me. You think I'd fake your mother's accident to take your money? Her face hardened. You're desperate. I wouldn't put it past you. His fists clenched. You think I'd weaponize your mother just to trick you? Yes, she said without flinching. Because I don't trust people who want my money. There it was. Not, I don't trust strangers. Not, I don't trust your dad. Just, I don't trust you. Before he could say anything else, she marched into the bedroom, opened a drawer, and pulled out the envelope with the bank card inside. She held it in her hand, staring at him like a judge. If you think I'm bluffing, try touching it again. He didn't move. She took out a pair of scissors from the desk drawer, flipped the bank card between her fingers. Don't be stupid, James warned. It's late, the banks are closed, the card's not linked to mobile, you cut that, and we can't do anything. She raised her chin. Then I guess no one gets the money. And before James could stop her, snip. The card split in two, a clean cut, irreversible. He stood in place, hollowed out by the sound. Why would you do that? Because I'd rather lose it than be manipulated. He dropped into the nearest chair, stunned. It's over, he whispered. Yes, she replied. It is. The irony settled like dust in the silence. Linda had thought she was defending herself against theft. In reality, she had just stolen her own mother's chance to live. James sat motionless on the chair, the two halves of the bank card lying like severed limbs on the floor. His hand was still outstretched, as if he could undo the last 10 seconds by simply reaching further, saying something smarter, being someone better. But Linda stood across from him, shoulders heaving, eyes alight with a strange satisfaction, as if mutilating her own mother's lifeline was a power move, not a mistake. He rose slowly, quietly picking up the pieces of the card. The edge of the magnetic strip was still warm from the scissors. He ran a thumb across the cut, hoping, irrationally, that he could tape it, save it, swipe it, but he knew better. It was dead. You didn't have to do that, he said softly. You didn't have to push me, she shot back. You turned this whole night into a moral circus. His eyes lifted to hers, red-rimmed and full of disbelief. Linda, your mother is going to die if we don't act. What don't you understand about that? What you don't understand, she said with eerie calm, is that I'm not legally obligated to do anything. We had a wedding banquet, we took pictures, we posted them online, that's all. His heart stumbled. We're engaged, we're practically married. She scoffed. Practically isn't legally, and until I register, I'm a free agent. He stepped forward. Is that why you've been stalling the marriage certificate, waiting for a moment like this, to walk away clean? She didn't answer. That was her answer. James felt something inside him break, a slow, thick crack that reached all the way back to the day he first saw her smile, the first time he held her hand, the first time he imagined her becoming his family. And now, in the worst moment of her family's life, she'd become the executioner. He stepped toward the drawer where she kept her banking documents. I know your PIN. Don't you dare, she snapped. Linda, I'm not doing this for me. This is for your mom. I said don't. She lunged. James reached first, fingers brushing the drawer handle, and that's when she bit him, hard. Pain exploded up his arm as her teeth sank into his skin. He screamed, yanking back. Blood immediately pooled from the crescent punctures. What the hell is wrong with you? You think I won't defend what's mine? She shrieked. He stared at her, stunned. This isn't a break-in. I'm trying to save your mother's life. My mother, she laughed bitterly. Right, so now it's convenient for you to say she's my mother. He clutched his arm. The bleeding wasn't deep, but it was real, physical. Like everything else tonight, it couldn't be ignored. Linda, he said slowly, you would rather let someone die than give up a cent? She didn't flinch. Not someone. Just anyone who thinks my money is free for the taking. He stepped back, wounded and wide-eyed. You're heartless. No, she said. I'm smart. You're just too emotional to see it. There was movement by the door. She turned toward it, wiped her mouth, and muttered, one more outburst like that, and I'll call the police. For what? He barked. Trying to stop you from killing your own mother with a scissors? Her voice rose. You're bleeding. You'll say I bit you. You'll paint yourself as the victim. That's your game, isn't it? He was silent. She pulled out her phone, hovering over the keypad. I swear, James, I'll report you for attempted assault. He blinked, stunned. You bit me. You reached for my drawer. It's not a weapon, Linda. It's a bank folder. And this, she said, holding up her phone, is how I protect myself. He stepped back, hands raised. You don't need protection from me. That's not how it looks to the police. James stared at her for a long time, and then it hit him, harder than the bite, louder than the argument, colder than her voice. She never saw us as family, not once, not even during their engagement. To her, he was a pending liability. And love? It was a line item on a spreadsheet. He walked to the kitchen, washed the blood from his arm, the sting burning more with each second. In the reflection of the steel faucet, he saw his face, tired, pale, and hollowed out. Behind him, Linda was pacing, muttering to herself. It's not my fault he's losing his mind. I told him not to touch the card. He turned to her. You're unbelievable. I told you from the beginning, she said, still not facing him. The bride price is my financial wall. You breach that, and we're done. He leaned against the sink. We were done the moment you bit me to protect your account balance. She finally looked at him. I'm done arguing, she said. If you really think someone's dying, go borrow from your own family. Or maybe call that girl, Karen, was it? I'm sure she'd help. James didn't answer. He just stared at her. She picked up the scissors again. You touch another thing. I'll cut that too. He felt the floor tilt beneath him. Somewhere in the pit of his stomach, he already knew the truth. If Linda could be this cold while believing it was his parent in the hospital, what would she do if she found out it was actually hers? And then it struck him. She didn't believe him, not really. That's why she was acting like this. She genuinely believed his mother was the one in surgery. And everything, every cruel word, every refusal, every cut, every bite, was made under the assumption that it wasn't her mother fighting for her life. That made it worse. Because she never once thought, what if he's telling the truth? She never asked, never checked, never verified, just blindly trusted her own bias. She thought she was protecting herself. She was sentencing her own mother. The elevator dinged. James didn't flinch. Linda was still throwing scattered objects across the apartment, setting the stage, bruising her arms against the corners of furniture, yanking her hair to make it look like he'd been violent. Her face was tear-streaked, but not from sorrow, from fury. Now you'll see what happens, she whispered. You're done for, James. My father's going to finish what I couldn't. James didn't move. He stood near the kitchen, arms crossed, blood still drying on his bitten forearm, eyes hollow. He'd already called his lawyer, he'd already filed for emergency property protection. The bride price account was frozen. There was no money to fight over. Just truth, and that had already started unraveling. The door burst open. Her father stood there, breath ragged, shirt half-buttoned, as if he'd thrown himself out of the hospital in mid-emergency. "Where's the card?" he demanded. Linda ran to him, collapsing at his feet like the scene was scripted. "Dad, he tried to take it, I fought him off, but he hit me, look at me." Her father looked at her, not past her, not through her, at her. He didn't blink. "You… what?" His voice cracked. She looked up. "I stopped him. I cut the card, I protected myself. You told me to stand my ground, didn't you?" "No," he whispered. "No, Linda. I told you to send the money." She blinked. "What?" "It was your mother in the ambulance," he said, voice breaking. "Your mother." The blood drained from her face. She stood up slowly, confused. "What are you saying? You called James, I thought—" Her eyes darted to James, then back to her father. "Wait. You called him?" "I called both of you," he shouted. He answered. "You didn't. I told him everything. I told him she was hemorrhaging, that we needed funds immediately. He said he'd get them, but you—" His voice shook. "You were too busy writing IOUs and cutting up cards." She tumbled back, the room spinning. No, I thought— I didn't know it was Mom." James said nothing. He watched it all unravel with a silence colder than accusation. Her father stepped forward, fists clenched. "You cut up the card?" She nodded dumbly. "It wasn't activated. He said he was going to steal." He struck her across the face. The sound was sharp. She collapsed to the floor, gasping. "You let your own mother lie in a hospital bed while you played games over a bride price?" he barked. "She gave you life, and you let her beg for breath while you argued about money?" Tears fell from her cheeks now, fast and unfiltered. "I didn't know. I thought it was his mother." "You didn't even check," her father hissed. "You didn't ask, you didn't care." She turned to James, voice hoarse. "Why didn't you correct me?" "I tried," he said coldly. "Multiple times. You should have forced me to believe you. I should have never needed to." At that moment, another knock at the door. 2 police officers entered, stern-faced and alert. "We received a domestic threat call," one asked. "A possible case of assault?" Linda jumped up. "Yes, that's right. He tried to take my card. He grabbed me. He bit. Wait, no, I bit." Her words tangled themselves. "He was bleeding. Look." The officer looked to James's forearm. James calmly lifted his arm. "Yes, officer, she bit me. I reached for the drawer to grab the card to pay for her mother's emergency surgery. She cut the card in half. The money is now inaccessible. The patient's in critical care. Her father can confirm." The officer turned to Linda's father. "Sir?" The old man nodded. "Everything he said is true." The second officer asked Linda, "You called us?" She faltered. "Yes, but I didn't know it was my mom. I thought—" "You thought your fiancé was tricking you into saving a stranger?" She couldn't answer. The officers looked at one another. No visible violence from his side. She initiated the physical contact, admitted the bite, and there's visible evidence. Unless you wish to press charges, sir, this seems like a false report. James shook his head. "I'm not here to escalate. She already destroyed enough." Linda's face twisted. "You're not pressing charges? Just like that?" "I don't need the police," he said. "I have the law." "What does that mean?" she snapped. "I had the bride price account frozen 2 hours ago," James said. "The application went through an emergency filing clause under intent to breach verbal contract. You said you wouldn't marry me. You refused to return the bride price. That's enough for a temporary freeze. My lawyer will file for full reimbursement at 9 a.m. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. He added, "And I've sent photos of the destroyed card and the IOU request to the judge. Let's see how well that plays in court." "I didn't know it was her," she whispered. "That's what makes it worse," he replied. "You assumed it was my mother, and you still bit me over it." She staggered back, eyes wet. "So what now? You're leaving me?" "I'm already gone," he said. Her father stepped forward. "We need to go. Your mother's still in surgery." Linda turned toward James, hands shaking. We need money, please, the freeze, it can be reversed, right? James looked at her for a long moment, then, you said you wouldn't drag me down, I'm just making sure you don't. She collapsed onto the floor. I was wrong. He didn't answer. She sobbed. I'll pay you back. I'll give you whatever you want. I'll say it was my fault in court. Just unfreeze it. James shook his head. You froze it the second you made me sign that IOU. By the time the sun cracked over the horizon, James had already filed 3 legal documents. His lawyer, a quiet, sharp man named Chen, had been awake since 4 a.m. reviewing voice recordings, messages, and the half-torn IOU Linda had made him sign. Everything was moving quickly because James had moved quickly. The bank card was destroyed, yes, but the account had already been flagged and locked. The balance was still traceable. It was no longer a question of if, only how long. He hadn't slept, he didn't need to, the adrenaline was enough, so was the clarity. Linda had left the apartment with her father 2 hours ago, desperate to reach the hospital, desperate to undo what she couldn't. James didn't follow, she hadn't even said goodbye. By 9:17 a.m., James received confirmation that the asset freeze was approved. He stared at the email on his screen, calm. It didn't feel like revenge, it felt like clean air after months of suffocation. By noon, Linda had started calling him. He let every call go to voicemail. By 2 p.m., she showed up in person. He didn't open the door. James, she screamed from the other side. Open up, I need to talk to you, this isn't how you fix things. He sat at the dining table, chopsticks in hand, quietly eating beef noodles from the shop down the street. It had just opened for lunch service. He'd been its first customer. You can't do this to me, she shouted, banging on the door. I told you I was sorry. He kept eating, the room quiet except for the clink of ceramic and wood. Please, her voice cracked. I've already used up everything in my savings. The doctor said if we don't move fast. She choked on a sob. They won't continue the care. James didn't move. She screamed louder. You said you loved me. He paused, let that sit in the silence, then picked up his phone and turned the volume up on the game playing through his speakers. It was League. Master Yi, his old comfort. From the other side of the door, Linda pounded again. They've stopped meds until we pay the next round, don't you get it? She's my mom, my mom! He didn't reply. Karen had messaged him earlier, just a single sentence. Saw the court filing, you finally woke up. He smiled at the screen. Karen had always seen straight through everything. Maybe he should have listened sooner. Linda was still outside, her voice had dropped to a broken cry now. Please, I was wrong, I thought it was your mom, I said things I didn't mean. James tilted his head. Then why had she meant them so easily? From his spot at the table, he could still see the faint outline of the bite mark on his arm. The memory flashed, her teeth sinking in, not out of fear, not out of instinct, but calculated desperation to protect a number on a screen. That wasn't love, that was survival, and he wasn't her partner, he was her liability. The noise outside paused. For a moment, James thought she had gone. Then came the sound of keys fumbling at the lock. James smiled. Click. Nothing. She tried again. Another click. Still nothing. That's when she screamed. You changed the locks? You bastard! He reached for his can of soda, cracked it open, took a sip. You can't lock me out. This is our place. We built this together. He calmly turned to the prenup folder still lying on the table. He flipped through the familiar pages, the clause she'd insisted on. If the marriage was never registered, the apartment remained solely his. Funny how that line had once made him feel insulted. Now, it felt like poetry. You think this is over? She screamed. You think I'll just walk away with nothing? He set the folder down, wiped his hands on a napkin, and walked to the window. She was still standing in the hallway, makeup streaked, hair tangled, cheeks hollowed. Her eyes locked with his through the glass. Let me in, she whispered. He didn't blink. I'm sorry, she said again, softer now. I was scared. I thought it was your family and I panicked. But I'll fix everything. I'll go to court and admit it all. Just let me in. He stared at her, then closed the blinds. By evening, the messages started pouring in from her extended family. screenshots, group chat logs, public posts. Linda's uncle, the one she had kicked out of the family group, had started talking. Word spread fast. It wasn't just that she'd refused to pay for her own mother's treatment. It was why: the IOU, the scissors, the bite, the police, the silence. By nightfall, even her mother had woken up. Richard had sent James a recording, just audio. James listened with headphones. Her mother's voice was frail but sharp. She did what? Richard's voice, quieter now. She thought it was James's mom. She refused. She cut the card. Then the mother's voice again, trembling. Get her out. I don't want to see her. That's not my daughter. The file ended there. James played it twice, then saved it to a folder called Peace. At 10:07 p.m., Linda tried again. She was sobbing outside. Please, everyone knows now. No one will talk to me. My friends left the group chat. My own mother won't let me visit. You win, James. Is that what you wanted? He muted the doorbell. Later, as he lay back on the sofa, Master Yi blinked across the screen. He stretched, ate a leftover dumpling, took another sip of soda. And for the first time in months, he let himself exhale. No shouting, no guilt, no cold calculations about love or legality, just silence, just noodles, just peace. He cracked a quiet smile and whispered to no one. I used to love her. Now I love peace. The courtroom was cold, but James didn't feel it. He sat straight in his chair, hands folded, eyes steady, watching Linda from across the aisle as she stared into her lap, lips trembling. She looked smaller now, like someone had turned down her brightness and left only the outline. The judge shuffled the papers in front of him. Based on the evidence presented, including the written IOU demand, the plaintiff's injuries, the police report, the destroyed card, and the sworn statements from multiple family members, this court finds the bride price was not only unreasonably withheld but deliberately weaponized in a moment of life-threatening urgency. James remained still. The judge continued, given that the marriage was not legally finalized and the plaintiff was subject to financial and emotional manipulation during an emergent family crisis, the bride price must be returned in full. Linda's gasp was barely audible. She didn't even look up. The gavel came down. The case was closed. James stood, bowed slightly to the judge, and walked out. Linda didn't follow. It had taken weeks to get there. The legal process wasn't quick, but it was thorough. His lawyer had done a surgical job, framing every moment of that night as both abuse of trust and financial malice. Even Richard, who initially tried to remain neutral, had backed away once the texts and voice recordings surfaced. When reporters caught wind of the drama, bride price withheld while mother lay dying, Richard cut all ties. His final message to Linda had been short. You made yourself radioactive, don't text me again. Her family hadn't been much kinder. Her mother, recovering steadily in the hospital, refused to see her. Nurses had been instructed to bar Linda from visiting, not even through glass. Her father had gone silent entirely, friends unfriended her, relatives took turns leaking screenshots to online forums. The IOU document trended on local WeChat circles like a ghost story. And Linda? She tried to patch her reputation together like a broken vase, frantic apologies, half-hearted public statements, even an anonymous blog post titled, Misunderstood Daughter-in-Law. But nothing held. You can't tape over betrayal, not when everyone has already seen the scissors. James stayed quiet through it all. He gave no interviews, no statements. He didn't need to. The silence spoke louder than anything. Karen texted him again on the day the court transferred the refunded bride price into his account. Saw the verdict. You deserved every word of it. I'm glad you chose yourself. He replied with a single thumbs up. She didn't push further. She never did. That was what made Karen different. She never needed to be louder than the moment. 3 days later, James was leaving the courthouse after submitting final paperwork to seal the case. Outside, standing near the bottom of the courthouse steps, was Linda. She looked unrecognizable. Her makeup was gone, but not in the soft, vulnerable way he used to love. This was hollow, drained. Her eyes were swollen. Her coat didn't fit like it used to, more like it was weighing her down. James, she whispered. He stopped, not because of her voice, but because of the moment, the final one. I'm sorry, she said, stepping forward. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I need to say it. He didn't move. I lost everything, she continued. You were right, I treated you like a contract. I thought I was protecting myself, but I was building a wall and locking myself inside it. Still, he said nothing. I didn't believe it was my mom, she choked. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that even when I thought it was your mother, I still... Her voice broke. I still acted like a monster. He blinked, slowly. I'll pay it back, she whispered. Even if the court already ruled, even if it takes years, I'll prove it wasn't about the money. She stepped closer. I know it's over, but I'm asking you, just once more, can we talk? James looked at her. The woman he had once imagined growing old with. The woman he'd worked overtime for, saved every cent for, fought to build a home with. But that woman never existed. Only the contract did. He turned and walked past her. Linda didn't chase him. She couldn't. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed right there on the concrete steps, shoulders shaking as she sobbed into her hands, watching James walk away with nothing in his hands, but everything in his heart. Security, peace, closure. The very things she clung to, she lost. The love she thought she could mortgage, denied. The power she tried to exert, reversed. Behind him, her cry echoed through the wind, but James didn't look back. He walked down the street, into the golden light of a late autumn afternoon, the world quiet around him. And in his mind, a final line settled, soft, but absolute. She priced her love like a contract, and when life called for heart, she had none to give.